11-year-old Brittany Martinez was from the suburbs of Chicago, in a place called Elgin. Wendy Howlett, her mother, and 5-year-old brother spent the day at an aquarium, and it was with classmates for a field trip, and this was on May the 8th, 1997. They got back at around 5 p.m, and Brittany saw her friends and wanted to play outside for a while. So she asked if she could go to a nearby park around 2 blocks away with a group of friends, and her mum told her to be back by about 6 p.m. It was then that Wendy decided to take the younger child to Aunt Pam's house, which was a short walk away as they all lived in the same neighbourhood. So Wendy left a note on the door for Brittany. It was basically saying she could either stay where she was or go to Aunt Pam's house alone. At the same time, Wendy had also seen a neighbour who lived down below, and she had asked him to pass on the message if he saw her. Wendy returned around 45 minutes later, and she made dinner, and she waited for her brother to pick her up for work, as they both did cleaning jobs together. By 6:20, husband Scott came back from work, and Wendy said that Brittany was still at the park with her friends. He disputed that and said she wasn't, because her friends were playing outside. Wendy went and quickly checked with her friends, and they said she was on her bike going to her Aunt Pam's house. Wendy checked with Pam, and Brittany had not arrived there at all. A search began with friends and family. By 8 p.m, and still no sign of Brittany, Wendy called the police department. She described what Brittany was wearing that day. She was wearing jeans, blue t-shirt, yellow socks and white shoes. And although they suggested that she could have run away, it came to the conclusion that that wasn't likely. The neighbour saw Brittany and said she came home around 5:50, and he gave her the message about her mum going to Aunt Pam's house, and that she could either stay there or go to Aunt Pam's house alone. It seemed Brittany wanted to go to Aunt Pam's house. He also said that 5 minutes later he had heard Brittany struggling up the stairs with her bike, so he had helped her and she had rode off. As the search got underway, Eddie Milker, which is Wendy's brother and Brittany's uncle, turned up at around 9 p.m. He had said he had stopped by at 6 p.m. to pick Wendy up and had seen Brittany, but left for work when Wendy was not there. Searches went everywhere, in every direction, including the park, dumpsters and alleyways. A helicopter had joined overhead, and hours of searching with still no sign. It was a little later before police discovered the bike was still down in the basement, so the bike must have been returned before Scott returned from work. Police checked the database for local known sex offenders, and they found one living near the park where Brittany had been playing, and he was living in a van. So naturally he was checked out, and Brittany wasn't there. He also gave an account of his activities that day, and they were all checked out. Brittany's uncle, Eddie, was questioned, and to the police he seemed very tired and defensive. However, he agreed to talk to them. Eddie was 20 years old and lived with his parents, Brittany's grandparents. By now, it was the early hours of May the 9th, and Brittany had been missing for 11 hours with still no sign. Appeals to the public were made, and the Polyclass Foundation was contacted. They gave advice on what to do, such as missing posters, etc. Eddie, who worked with Brittany's mum, gave a statement. He said at 6 p.m. he arrived to pick up Wendy, and they were due to clean a building that night. He said he saw Brittany outside with her bike. Brittany said that her mum wasn't home, so he said he couldn't wait any longer. At 6:45, Eddie said he stopped at a store and was at work until 8:30, and found out Brittany was missing at 9 p.m. He searched places where Brittany played, but after he went to a friend's house to have a smoke. So the investigators decided to check out Eddie's alibi. So they went to the president of the company whose building Eddie was meant to be cleaning, and the night before he said he was working late that night and didn't see anyone who was cleaning. The investigators then checked the convenience store, which had 24-hour surveillance. There was no sign of Eddie Milker in that store at all. He had lied about his whereabouts. Brittany's mum and family clung to hope. Brittany had been now missing for 36 hours, and the last person to have seen her was Eddie Milker, her own uncle. Brittany's mother contacted police and said her brother Eddie wanted her to talk to them, as he had lied about his whereabouts on the night Brittany went missing. He said that when he saw Brittany, he was under the influence of marijuana, and he had left her in front of the apartment at 6:15. But when he pulled into work, he avoided going in as he was still high and didn't want to get caught. So he only entered the building at 8:15, when he saw his boss leave. This still wasn't true, as the boss said that no one was there at any point that night, as he had stayed much later. While questioning Eddie, investigators asked him to imagine where Brittany was. He started saying he had a vision, and he said that she was near Elgin and that she was cold and wet. The police asked if she was breathing, and he said no. They had asked if she was bleeding, and his answer again was no. He said his vision was that she was in an old grey car with two men who were doing horrible things to her, and they were near some farmhouses. He then stated that she was dead and needed to tell his sister. He said that the police were putting things in his head. The friends he smoked with said that he was there until 5:50 p.m. Milker left and said that he'd be back and returned at 10:30 at night. He was upset and said his niece was missing and left his friend's house at around 1 a.m. On May 17th, a couple was on the river Kishwaukee, 18 miles away outside of Elgin, when suddenly they found the body of a girl. She was washed up. The FBI of Elgin police checked that it was Brittany through dental records. She had died of asphyxiation. The investigation now changed from missing child to homicide. The vision that Eddie had had was very similar to the area where Brittany was found. From samples taken, including the larvae, Brittany had died no later than 2 p.m. that day after she was taken. Forensic pathologists confirmed that she had died from asphyxiation, as 2 strips of tape were removed from the mouth, and also what looked to be like a bite mark on Brittany's cheek. Brittany's jeans were half zipped and underwear was inside out. Brittany had been sexually assaulted. Detectives hoped that clothing on Brittany would provide physical evidence to catch whoever did this. Investigators wanted to know why Brittany's body was found in a river 18 miles away from her home. In other words, what was the significance of the place? This question was put to Brittany's mother, and she said that her father was employed by the Milwaukee Railroads, and that they as a family, including Eddie Milker, had visited the area through family summer trips, just a short distance away from where Brittany was found. It seems that Eddie Milker was now prime suspect. Although it was circumstantial and no physical evidence found, the detectives now got a warrant for samples of Eddie's hair, blood and saliva. Once forwarded to the FBI lab, so examiners can start working on DNA mapping. A forensic dentist also took impressions of Milker's teeth to compare the cast to the teeth marks found on Brittany's face. It appeared the bite mark matched the picture of Eddie's teeth, but unfortunately results were inconclusive, because the distortion of the teeth mark due to decomposition, so therefore still not enough evidence to make an arrest. All the while, Brittany's family would not believe that Eddie would have had anything to do with Brittany's murder. A warrant was obtained to search Eddie's car. Although soil samples were taken from the wheel of the car to prove where it had been, but the samples proved to be too common. Inside the car there were red stains on the floor mat and other parts of the upholstery, including a cup with a partial handprint and some dried blood. The Milker family said that was a time when Brittany had a nosebleed, but Brittany's other grandmother, who was also there that day, said she doesn't recall the incident of Brittany having a nosebleed. One side of Brittany's family, Wendy's mother's side, believed that Eddie wouldn't have had anything to do with the murder, whereas the paternal side of Brittany's family had conflicting ideas. Although circumstantial evidence pointed to Eddie Milker, unfortunately, there wasn't enough physical evidence to charge Eddie with. 6 months had passed since the body of Brittany Martinez was found. Examiners at the FBI crime lab had spent months going through all trace evidence. A scientist received Brittany's clothing. It was processed in the scraping room to ensure no contamination could possibly happen, and a fibre was found on the inside of Brittany's jeans, which was different from any other found. This fibre, compared to a fibre in Milker's car, was a match. Experts determined that Brittany had been in Milker's car with her jeans off. However, they couldn't prove that it wasn't another car with the same carpet, as the fibre was commonly used in other cars too. They decided to focus on the bloodstains of the carpet of the car and the cup. Through tests, it was confirmed that it was Brittany's blood found in Eddie's car. It was finally enough to issue a warrant for the arrest of Eddie Milker, and on December the 18th, 1997, Eddie was charged with aggravated kidnapping, predatory criminal assault of a child, and murder. Wendy Howlett still insisted he didn't do it. Milker's mother and Wendy had to testify because of certain stories had changed for unknown reasons. The prosecution called more than 50 witnesses, and they said that Eddie was the one who helped return Brittany's bike that was in the basement, and she had jumped in Eddie's car, as she'd sometimes like to come and help with the cleaning when Eddie and her mum worked. Prosecutors then said Eddie went to a forest reserve after seeing his boss's car at work. They believed he sexually assaulted her and smothered Brittany and dumped her in the Kishwaukee River. Although the jury believed that Eddie didn't plan to kill Brittany, so they found him not guilty of first-degree murder. But they did find him guilty on the second charge of murder while in commission of a felony sexual assault. Eddie was finally found guilty, and he was sentenced to 75 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections. This was a murder that literally tore a family apart, and how could anyone comprehend such a loss, that of a murdered child, as well as the fact that it was your own brother who was guilty of the murder. Please like and subscribe for more content.